And hello there. Welcome to the latest edition of Bloomberg Editorial Board Conversations. I'm your host, Robert George, and I'm very happy to invite I should say, introduce my colleague Mary Duenwald, another member of the Bloomberg Opinion Editorial Board. And today we are going to talk about all fun things. Vaccines, masks, CDC, and other related topics. Mary, welcome.
Thank you. It's nice to be here.
It's great to have you. I wanted to start. In the last week, the CDC released its latest guidelines for the vaccinated, and like many other CDC decisions over the last 15 months of the pandemic, it generated a lot of controversy. For those who are vaccinated, it said if you're outside, the masks can come off, and in fact, if you're all among vaccinated, the mask can come off even if you're indoors as well. That seemed to have caused a lot of confusion, and one of the questions we've had is the CDC a good spokesman for these things? It seems whether it's Trump or whether it's Biden, a lot of the pronouncements seem to create more confusion than they do for clarity for a rather bewildered public.
Well, I'm among those who think the CDC is a good spokesperson. They do rely on scientific data. During the Trump administration, they were challenged as the administration tried to undermine what they were doing, accused them of undermining the administration, and there was a lot of reason back then to wonder who was in charge. But now, with the new CDC director, Rochelle Walensky, they're following the science. And I think there was pushback against the CDC when they were considered too restrictive about what we could do. And then there's been pushback from the other direction now about worries that they've liberated the rules too much. But if you think about the data that they base that on, it makes sense. As the studies of the vaccine and the coronavirus have gone on, they've learned three things. One is that the vaccines work. They prevent infection almost all the time. And when they don't prevent infection, they prevent serious illness and death. The second thing is they work against the variants so far. And the third thing is they prevent transmission. So a person who's vaccinated, if that person gets infected, they won't transmit the virus to anybody else. So if you put those three things together, it means that a vaccinated person can go out in the world and is safe, basically, from dangerous infection and is of no danger to anybody else. One of the big criticisms has been, well, how are we going to know who's vaccinated and who isn't vaccinated? That, the honor system doesn't work. But the thing I think that is going, that's being misperceived is that a vaccinated person, and that's who this advice is for, doesn't need to worry about that. Vaccinated person is safe, and a vaccinated person is no danger to anybody else. Now, that's not perfect, but it's close enough to be perfect where the benefits outweigh the risks.
Well, one of the places that where we got criticism from the CDC were other epidemiologists. I think there was a consortium or a letter that went out, like 700 of them, that said they expected the guidance to recommend that the public still continue to wear masks, even outside, even whether you're vaccinated or not. When the public has been encouraged to listen to, quote, experts for the last year plus, are they getting conflicting messages now?
I mean, they're not getting conflicting messages from the CDC. Yes, I mean, in the media, There are all kinds of conflicting messages and sensationalism, as there has been since the beginning of the pandemic. But
or the beginning of time, we could say.
time. But I don't know what those epidemiologists base their criticism on. Do they not trust the vaccines, or is it just too much of a head-spinning thing? One of the things that was pointed out in a New York Times article that I thought was interesting is that in the past, out of necessity, the CDC was giving advice for the whole community. There was no vaccine, so everybody, really, the best advice was to masks, stay distant, quarantine after travel, get tested regularly. Now there are vaccines, and about 40% of Americans have gotten them. Even more have gotten at least the first shot. So the advice has sort of shifted to community, to individuals. And as I keep saying, this advice is for the vaccinated.
Is there any kind of worry, or should there be any worry that we're as we open up and as restaurants start going back to full capacity and so forth? Should there be any worry that we're in a sense kind of on the honor system, that if everybody, the restaurant owners and staff just basically have to just assume that people are being honest when they say when they're saying when they're being vaccinated? Is that any kind of a concern?
Well, if they're not vaccinated.
Well, is there any? Should restaurant owners be concerned that people who are coming in maybe unvaccinated because they feel they never wanted to get vaccinated? They may be some of the same people who are mask holdouts as well, because they figure they're either they're immune, or they think it's a hoax, or what have you. In that sense, is it better for a restaurant owner, or a shop owner for that matter, to say we would still prefer our customers to be masked unless they're eating or drinking or what have you?
Well, one of the things they might be concerned about is that they're around children who aren't vaccinated, or they're around immunocompromised people who have less protection, or might have less protection from the vaccine. But I don't think there's a clear reason why they need to worry. As long as their staff is vaccinated, they know that their vaccinated customers are protected. The people who are taking the risk here are the unvaccinated, unmasked.
Yeah. I want to speak to something that I think you are uniquely qualified to talk about. We're here in New York, and everybody's favorite team, the New York Yankees, had this outbreak where a number of coaches and at least one player, they were allegedly all vaccinated. And yet they all ended up testing positive. I understand you had a similar experience where after you've been vaccinated, you tested positive as well. Is this something? Should people be worried about that, or are there other if you're vaccinated, should you just realize that you might get a symptom here and there, but it's nothing to worry about in the way it was in the pre-vaccination times?
I mean, my experience suggests that, I was vaccinated, and then it was 12 days after my second shot, I was infected. But my experience suggests that you're pretty safe. I didn't get sick. I didn't even feel as much of sort of chills and fatigue as I felt after the second shot, although it was kind of similar to that. But some people get a breakthrough infection like that, including some of those baseball players, and they get no symptoms at all. The impression that I had was that the vaccine had really protected me. And I also think, because of the timing on when I figured out that I was infected, it also prevented me from infecting anybody else.
Okay.
And so those are the things, add in that it also protects against variants, that the CDC is basing this new recommendation on.
So does this suggest that we are approaching the so-called herd immunity? I know there was at least one report a few weeks ago that suggested that the experts and so forth had given up on the idea of herd immunity because the number of people getting vaccinated had been going down. But now, over the last few weeks, we've seen almost across the country, infections are down, hospitalization numbers are down, and most importantly, deaths are down. So, is it herd immunity, or is it something closer, something close to that?
Well, we don't have herd immunity yet. Herd immunity means that so many people are immune to the virus that it stops circulating in the population. It's obviously still circulating. We've got thousands of people being infected every day in the United States still, although the number is way down. But theoretically, you could get to herd immunity if about 70% or so people get vaccinated. And it's true that vaccine hesitancy could get in the way of that. But let's say you could get herd immunity that way. Now that it looks as if the vaccines protect against the variants, that does seem theoretically possible. But even so, as time goes by, that protection might wear off. And so, booster shots would be needed. At this point, infectious disease people seem to assume that this coronavirus is going to be endemic like flu viruses are, and will keep being around, and we'll never get sort of permanent herd immunity to it. But we will get what people call, normalcy, where we don't have to worry whether every person we see is going to infect us with the coronavirus.
Given the heavy lift that we had in terms of, I guess we're close to around 40% of the public having some, at least one shot or so. Are we going to have a similar struggle when we get to the discussion about booster shots as well? And will we need to get just as many people the booster shots, or is there some other kind of a level that will balance things out?
I mean, I don't know. I know that they're working on this possibility that booster shots will be needed, meaning the vaccine makers. I guess I'd like to think, and I base this on just various things that experts have said, that this would become more like the flu, where you want to protect yourself against it by getting a shot every year. And maybe they'll get better at that and get some kind of universal vaccine at some point, but that it won't be a pandemic like we've just had in the last 15 months.
As we kind of finish up and come to the end of our time here, for a year or so, there has just the whole issue of masks has become so incredibly politicized. Now that we've reached this level, if not immunity, but certain a medical or a medical kind of a barrier up to help slow the spread, to use an old phrase. Do you think we can get to a sort of an end to the mask civil war on both sides, an end to the mask shaming or non-mask shaming?
I mean, I don't know. It's human nature to judge each other, and people are sort of doing that inside their heads. I haven't really heard of a lot of instances where people actually spoke up and said, put on your mask, or, shame. I think some of the shaming is assumed rather than actually happening. But the question now, I guess, is whether you turn it around and start to, whether people who are vaccinated and wearing masks just on an overabundance of caution would start to feel shamed into taking that mask off, that like there'd be social pressure too.
And I guess one last observation we could make, that it does make a certain amount of sense to wear masks in public transportation. For example, I know for myself, I can remember just pre-pandemic, if you go to Chinatown in New York, or individuals getting onto the subway in Chinatown, there are individuals who have memories of SARS going back 15, 16 years, and they still wear masks going on public transit. Is that a lesson that we might want to learn here in the United States?
I just, hope we don't have to start always wearing masks on public transit. But if people feel more comfortable that way, certainly, I wonder if another norm could be, if you're ill and you're coughing and sneezing, then it's politeness, where it didn't used to be, to wear a mask, to not infect others. I guess that's as far as I would go.
That sounds fine, and that sounds like a perfect place to stop. Mary, thanks for joining us, and I guess I'll see you on Zoom tomorrow. Or excuse me, our internal video conference.